Because again, the main way of getting good at this is being able to see examples. Make sure you write the examples down fully. And then use those for homework, classwork, whatever, just so that you see things that repeat over and over again. So what we're essentially working up towards was one of those four. Like, I understand there's HL, right, the fifth way, but you got to have a right triangle, and you got to have a hypotenuse given to you. So again, it's very specific. But remember that when you're writing out an explanation, or you're involving anything that has these proofs in them, you're essentially working towards finding pairs of angles or pairs of sides that are congruent. So when you write these out, it's essentially you write out on the picture things that are congruent, then you transfer what you marked in the picture to the proof. All right, so, and I'll try my best to go slow through these, but I might have a tendency to go fast depending on what we're doing. All right, so again, your guys' first step, like I said in the little steps I just gave you, should be marking off the givens. Well, again, like I said in the book, or in the problems you guys are doing, they do it for you. But it's a good habit to go, all right, this stuff is given to me, BC and DC are congruent, and AC and EC are congruent. Okay, just because on the test I won't have those marked, you need to do it so you can visualize it, because that's what helps you decide which of the 4 or 5 ways to prove the triangles are congruent. Okay? Now I know I cut it off, but I'm assuming this was like prove the 2 triangles are congruent, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be step 1. All right. Now, what I'll do for these first few is I'll number what I mark on the picture, because again, everything that I mark on the picture, when I transfer it over to my proof, everything that I draw on there has to be transferred to a statement. So I know, like, if I've got 1 next to the givens, it means I'm going to write the givens in my first step. Alright. Now again, I wouldn't suggest marking it and then writing it and going back and forth, because again, that can kill some people's train of thought. But if you're fine with that, then have at it. You can flip-flop between them all you want. Alright, so then the second thing would be, look at those pictures I gave you, the diagrams or the reminders, whatever, however you wrote them, and see if there's anything that matches to this. Meaning, like, check for reflexive properties, which isn't there, there's no overlap. Check for vertical angles. Are there vertical angles in this kind of picture? Yes. Yeah. To make it easier on yourself, again, you can number these angles, like 1 and 2. Okay, just so you don't have to do it that way, but if you don't put those in there, you'd have to say like angle BCA and ECD. Alright, so that's like the second thing I marked off. Then I can look for, well, there's no bisectors given to me, and there's no parallel lines, meaning there's nothing left on those common figures for me to mark off. So I would hope that I have enough marked on the picture to match up to one of those 4 ways already. Either this, or HL maybe, but there's no right triangle, so HL shouldn't exist. Do I have, are one of these things going to match to what I have marked off there? Yeah, which one? Okay, so this is it. This right here is what's used to prove it. So really, this is a 3-step proof. You'd be done with it, right? Then you would just transfer over. So here's where I say people lose points on like a test, or even doing it completely. They'll put these little congruency marks there because they'll know vertical angles are congruent. When they write it over here, they forget to actually say it. doing it on the picture does not mean you're doing the proof correctly. Like, you have to take what's on the picture and transfer it to here. So I have to say, I marked those two angles congruent because those are vertical angles, which in turn gave me enough information to say two triangles were congruent, and that was side angle side, because that's what we said it was. So go through all the steps, right? First thing would be, look at the givens, make sure they're marked off. Well, again, this is coming from the book, so they already do it for you. I'm going to go ahead and repeat it just so I remind myself I do have a first step. That is, I got to repeat the givens so that I can actually start the problem. Okay? All right, so then go through those common things, right? So they're, I'll put them over here, vertical angles, reflexive. There is, how to do it, parallel lines. And there's the bias. Okay, so that second thing is going to be go through all those, see what you find. Are there any vertical angles up there? No, this kind of picture doesn't have it, so that's gone. Next thing would be reflexive. Are there reflexive parts there? Like, are there overlapping parts? Yeah. What's the overlap there? XZ. So I've got a reflexive side right there. So that's the second thing I'm marking on the picture. So that's going to translate to the second step in my proof. So that's there. Do they give us parallel lines? Yeah, it says it right here. They give me parallel lines, which means if they give me parallel lines, I better find some alternate interior angles because it doesn't match that. Remember, that's the only one for corresponding. Okay, now keep in mind, right, the alternate interior angles have to be the ones in contact with the parallel lines. So since my parallel lines are here and here, that means that this angle and that one are the alternate interior angles, not this one and that one. Okay, so this is going to be step 3, me marking those, which again, just to simplify writing it, I'll put a 1 and 2 in there so I can say angle 1 and angle 2. Alright, so that was there. And then there's no bisector, so that I don't need. Alright, so hopefully this matches up to, again, one of those, because since it's asking for two triangles being congruent, I got to end with one of these things. Does it match? Does it match with one of them? Yeah, which one? So this is step 4. It's a 4-step. Okay, so now again, the point of me writing those 1, 2, 3s, and 4s is so that when I come over here, I can just match them up accordingly stepwise. So like step 1 is just restating the given. Alright, step 2 was the reflexive side, because that's where I got the 2. So that's XZ is congruent to XZ. Step 3 was 1 and 2. That was my alternate interior angles because I had the parallel lines. And then the fourth thing is just ending the proof. So the two triangles are congruent to each other because of side and side. So one thing we're going to use, I didn't put on the common figure stuff because it's on the front side. Like if you flip to the front side of that page, it's on the little cheat sheet thing. It's got like, that might not be there. But we're going to have to use the fact that right angles are the same measure and congruent to each other to do this. Now again, with the problem like this, there's a common mistake of people going, hey, it's a right angle, it's already marked. They don't have to actually acknowledge the fact that they're congruent, but that's not the case. Even though people can get to the final answer for why these are congruent, they'll probably skip a step or two with this type of proof and with these specific givens. Okay? All right, now here's another thing that happens is step one is marking the givens, which again they did with putting the right angles in there. And then this word, okay, you can maybe give yourself a reminder on the picture, something that's saying like this line, they're saying this line right here bisects this one. So this line is cutting this one in half. But it doesn't say that this one's being cut in half. It's only saying this one. Alright, so you can kind of remind yourself by going like, I don't know, BD is split or something like that. That's what I mean by mark. Okay? Now, as a result of that thing being split, like if I split this thing at that point where the line's crossing it, that's going to give me those two being congruent. Alright, but again, here's what happens is people will mark that, but if I'm saying BC and CD are congruent, that's going to go in as a step. Step one is the givens. Okay, so again what happens is people go, well, the words there bisect, I don't have to actually say what parts are congruent, but you always need to say the actual parts that are congruent to each other. Alright, another thing I would expect people to really be able to look at this and tell right away would be, what kind of angles do you have here? Vertical, so I know that those are congruent to each other. So that might be like a step 3. And then there's one more step to make it technically correct before you say which method you use to prove the two triangles are congruent. Even though if I looked at it right now, would there be one of these that matched up?
Yes.
Yeah, which one? Yeah, I got this one right here because I've got angle, side angle. Okay, now here's the place people forget about quite a bit. When I put like an A on that for angle side angle, that means that they're congruent angles. So you actually need to add a step, like a fourth step, saying that the right angles are congruent. Don't just leave it at the givens say they're right angles, therefore I know they're 90 and blah blah. You don't assume people get that. You actually need to add a step saying that they're congruent to each other. Then you can end it at 5 steps. Okay, so if I wrote this full thing out, it's going to say, what is that, B and D? It's going to say B and D are right angles. And then it'll say like AE bisects BD for the given. Alright, the second thing I marked was BC is congruent to CD. Alright, and the reason that I was able to do this is because of that word right there. So if this word told me what to do, it needs to be definition of whatever that word is. Bisect. The third thing was the vertical angles, which I did not label 1 and 2, so I'll actually write them out this time. ECD. Then the fourth step was stemming from the original, which I could have actually put this as step 2 if I wanted to. Is saying B and D are congruent to each other because all right angles are congruent, and then you're done. And that was angle side angle. Alright, so now you got at least one example of each length, because you're probably not going to see many past 5, you're not going to see many less than 3. Average is probably about 4 steps, although 3 steps, 4 steps, and 5 steps are your common length that you guys will see with the triangles. Okay. All right, your guys' homework tonight is going to be in the